Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first webinar in our series. We are excited to kick things off with a session featuring the renowned author and speaker Peter Taylor. A quick bit of scene setting. So this year, Best Outcomes celebrates 25 years of helping organizations achieve better business results. Since 2000, we've remained outcome driven, providing the tools and strategies to deliver successful projects with much greater efficiency and control. At the heart of this is our PM3 ecosystem. It's a comprehensive set of project and portfolio management solutions that streamlines delivery, enhances governance, and maximizes visibility. In short, PM3 helps businesses work smarter, not harder, which is exactly what today's session is all about and will be the main focus of our future webinars. Peter, the author of The Lazy Project Manager, will share practical strategies to optimize your project management approach, sharing insights that will melt Gantt charts and no doubt recalibrate productivity itself. He showed us all the path to working smarter, not harder, ensuring you focus on what truly matters in order to simplify success and drive better project outcomes. We're delighted to have him with us, and we're confident you'll leave with valuable insights you can apply straight away. Peter will be joined by David Walton. David is the founder and managing director of Best Outcome. He has over 30 years of experience of successfully delivering projects and programs. He was formerly at PwC before he founded Best Outcome in 2000. He has delivered projects, programs, and improved project delivery processes for a wide range of blue chip and public sector clients, including Marks and Spencer, Esso, BP, Hoffman La Roche, and the NHS and One Savings Bank. A highlight of his career was as program director for Marks and Spencer's head office transformation program. And David will be sharing his experience in a joint discussion with Peter, like a project management Yoda armed with PM3. We have plenty of knowledge to tap into over the duration of the session. There is the facility to ask questions. We will pick them up at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Peter to get us started and hope you enjoy the session.
Well, thank you, Martin, for that one, and congratulations to the whole of the team on the 25th anniversary. That's quite a milestone, and I hope I get an invitation to the party. All right, I'm just gonna share a couple of slides with you. Not too much of a heavy presentation, but I want to talk about three key points, I believe, in that working smarter, not harder approach, which is at the heart of everything that I've done over the many years. So, my background is very much project management. Absolutely, it's been project management as a career for many, many years indeed. And in more recent times, I've had the pleasure of helping design and build perhaps some of the largest PMOs in the world, working with hundreds of project managers around the world. And in my private life, I enjoy writing and speaking and sharing some of the experiences and knowledge I've gained over the years. That's really what I'm trying to do a little bit today. So let's start with the first point, which is the art of smart prioritization. Now, let's take this entry to the conversation in two ways. I mean, the first thing is priority is a fascinating word if you look it up, because priority originally meant the one thing that was more important than everything else. The one thing. Wouldn't that be nice that we actually existed in that world today where there was just one thing that was truly more important than anything else? But sometime during the 19th century, the meaning of the word changed and we were allowed to have multiple priorities. And that's something we battle with on a regular basis, a daily basis often, of what is more important, what should I be looking at right now, what should I be tackling, what's the best focus of my efforts and personal return on investment. So this is the word that we deal with. It is multiple priorities these days. And secondly, more and more when I talk to people and talk to organizations, I describe it in that there are kind of three strata layers within organizations right now. There's business as usual. There's what you do on a daily basis that your company, your business, your organization is all about. It's what it is you do to make profit or to deliver value, or whatever it is your company does. Business as usual is obviously critical because that's why you are in existence. On top of that, at the highest level, if you like, there is ongoing change. There is often transformation. There is often significant change activities. And this is a world where project managers are involved, and perhaps many of you are project managers. And this is a world I refer to as projects as projects. It's defined, it's definite. It is a project. It's got a start, it's a finish. It is a temporary endeavor. It's very clearly described as a project or major initiative of change inside your organization. And you're dedicating professionals to that work. But somewhere in the middle between projects as projects and business as usual, there is this layer which is growing all the time. And I refer to it these days as projects as usual. And this is where people are asked to deliver some change. It's usually not so complicated. It's not usually not so challenging or complex, probably with a shorter time frame, probably a lower risk. But they're being asked to deliver project change as part of their day-to-day job. Hence the term projects as usual. And this creates a very challenging environment inside organizations. And what I try to do in the work that I do and the messages I share is offer up some guidance to those layers, both project professionals, but also the people who have to deliver projects which is part of their day job. So, art of smart prioritization. Let's kick this one off. Well, my first tip is that first of all, identify the key deliverables. Understanding what it is you have to do is really critical. We all exist in a world of where we keep saying yes to things, perhaps without really understanding the depth or the scope of what we're saying yes to. So the first thing is to identify the key deliverables, understand what is expected of you to deliver those deliverables, and then it's about determining the tasks directly to contribute to project success and prioritize them. The technique that I use, and I'm going to try and offer up some real practical advice here, is when you have a to-do list. The fact that something has been on the to-do list longer than other things does not mean it's necessarily more important. It can be. It doesn't mean it is necessarily. Something new might have come in that is actually more important. So I think when I try and work with groups, I suggest that when you have that to-do list, you apply two factors to them. And it's a little bit like a risk matrix, but the two factors are, what's the importance of what I'm doing and what's the impact of what I need to do. And by asking these two questions, and you can be clever, you can grade them from 1 to 10 or something like that, but don't take the oldest first, naturally. Don't just take the ones you think are most important. Think about what is the impact of the ones you've got to do. And I believe that will give you some intelligent prioritization of the things that you will have to do and those around you have to do. So the first thing is identifying the key deliverables, and that's one technique that I use. It's a combination of importance and impact, and it gives you an output which says, actually, this is more important than anything else. And then when you've actually done that, it is, what can you do about effectively delivering those deliverables? And some of them you will do because that's what you should do, that you're the best person to do that. But again, I think it's a matter of asking questions of yourself. Am I the right person to do this? Is there someone better suited to do this? Can I delegate effectively to someone else? Is this a learning opportunity for someone perhaps? Is there an opportunity to spread the load, your personal load? That doesn't mean you just give things away. Obviously, we all have to be part of this kind of project world and project success, and we all have to work effectively in these areas. But it's a matter of understanding, and this is one of the mistakes I made when I first started in project management. I ran a project for nearly 3 years, actually. It was an incredibly exciting project in many ways, but at the end of it, I recognized I was almost completely burnt out. I experienced stress like I've never experienced before. I had cancelled holidays. I'd worked on holidays. I'd working evenings and weekends. It was consuming my life. At the end of it, I reflected that I actually love this project world, but equally, I reflected I can't work like that for the next 20, 30 years because it will probably kill me. And so when I talked to some great people around me, and I learned that the biggest mistake I was making was I was not delegating. I was not trusting people to deliver things as part of a project team. So delegate effectively. And then it's about efficiency of focusing on elimination of things you don't have to do. Any process, remove any steps that is in your way. You know, what is the minimal viable approach that you can take to deliver success? And I'll tell you, one of the biggest areas of challenge I often see in organisations is in the quality assurance activities, because in quality assurance, what happens is there's been a problem, there's been an issue, and so uh, the QA process has something added to it, and then there's something else, and something else is added. The way I talk about it to people is, imagine if you banged your hand and you cut it, so you put a little plaster or band-aid on there, and then you knock it again, so then you put a bandage on top of it, and then you knock it again, and you end up putting a plaster cast on it. QA processes can often be like that. And so the suggestion here is, look at your processes and eliminate the unnecessary tasks. So that was the art of smart prioritization. Now the power of strategic communication. In our project world, in our business world, of course, but it's certainly in our project world, the amount of communication is credible. Certainly project managers, depending on what you read, 70% or more of their time is spent in some form of communication. And the guidelines here, I mean, there's a lot of science you can look into communication, a lot of fascinating articles and books about it. But the simplest thing, I think, for everybody to remember is that if you want to effectively communicate, you have to deliver the right information to the right person at the right time and in the right way. And if you fail on any of those four elements, you will probably have failed to communicate effectively. This is one of the reasons why project reporting is often an incredibly bad way of communicating. The fact you can produce the most beautiful 16-page project status report with diagrams and graphs and beautiful font layouts and every piece of data possible, and you email it or send it to every single stakeholder and their best friend, again, the chances are you have not effectively communicated because you failed by delivering the right information to the right person at the right time in the right way, because we're all different how we like to consume. So my suggestions here are: use really concise updates. In the modern world, with whatever technology you're using, there's lots of tools right now, but it can become incredibly overwhelming. Right now I'm probably a member of at least 20 working groups, and if I try and consume the output from all of the chat channels, etc., it can be incredibly overwhelming. And then on top of that, we all get recordings of the meetings we couldn't attend. So it comes down to, what is the most concise way you can get updates to people? Keep chat short, keep email short, keep reports short, to the point, and also personalize them as well. That the right person in the right way is really critical here, because, as I said, we're all very different. Some people like a 9-box PowerPoint summarization. Some people like an email bullet point. Some people want a phone conversation or a face-to-face meeting or online meeting. We're all different, but to be effective, you have to think about that. And so, choosing the right channels is really important as well. Not every message needs a meeting. Don't we all know that? Don't we all have too many meetings? Sometimes a quick chat, a shared document, or an AI-powered dashboard can be far more effective. It's finding ways for people to pull information that is up to date without you having to constantly push information out there. And then I think it's about setting expectations here. If you set the right expectations and understand what people want from you and what you need from them, remember, it's a two-way process here. Establishing clear communication guidelines so all stakeholders know when and how they'll receive updates. And anybody who contributes to that, they know why you need that information to that quality level on that day, at that time, and what use it's going to be put to. Often I come across people who they're unclear. They're challenged on a regular basis, maybe a weekly basis, to provide some information, but they have no idea where that information goes or what it's used for, or what meetings it's used in, or what discussions take place, or what decisions are taken as a result of it. They just blindly put together something on a regular basis without any understanding of the consequences. So the power of strategic communication is critical. And I'll always go back. The simplest way of thinking about communication is, are you providing the right information? Are you providing it at the right time? Are you delivering it to the right person? And are you delivering it in the right way that suits that individual? And my third point is the work smarter mindset. If you think about this, and it is about the intelligent application of your time, the right investment of your efforts and skills and knowledge to deliver the perfect return on investment. So, these days there is a great opportunity of leveraging AI, artificial intelligence, and automation. I mean, the tools are growing. My own company is working with a number of these. I'm sure your organization is experimenting as well. The ability to automate repetitive tasks and provide real-time insights, I think, is going to be a giant leap forward for the profession of project management. Absolutely. But if you can do that on top of the simplification of processes as well, I talked about that earlier on, then you can automate faster and more effectively. It's a combination of two. And I know data sits in there as well, and that's a whole conversation perhaps for another day, but the quality of data that you've got that is being used to provide these sort of intelligent automated reports and decision making is really, really critical. The old saying about data is, if you remember, it's garbage in, garbage out. And if you think about artificial intelligence, if you put garbage in and you get garbage out, but you get garbage out faster with AI. So the underlying data is really, really important. The other way I think people can definitely work smarter is by standardizing output. Now, this has to balance with what I talked about just now about the right way to communicate with people. But if you've got a working group, whether it's a steering group or whatever, if you can standardize the output, a common template, a common form for simplicity of completion, but also understanding. I've been on review groups like that, and you're presented, perhaps 10 project or program updates. And if everybody's using a different template, it takes half the time to assimilate and understand what is being presented. Whereas a consistent presentation is much easier to understand rapidly. You get straight then to talking about the actual project in itself, rather than trying to understand what this data is being presented to you. It breaks down the barrier, I believe. And also, by focusing on outcomes, not effort, measure success by the results, not by the hours worked, I think is a much better way of doing it. In my own world, we talk about the PMO as being, the PMO stands for projects, methods, and outcomes, and that's the way we measure everything that we actually do. My last point on this one, before we can move on to a kind of discussion with David, is when you it goes back to the prioritization list. It goes back to there's definitely the working smarter, that when you agree to do something, one, ensure you understand what it is you're agreeing to. We're all busy, and someone comes up and says, "Can you do this?" Yeah, I'll do that. No problem at all. If that happens, then the problem is going to be that you don't know what you've just committed to. So say yes in a controlled way and an understanding way. Say no in the right circumstances, politely, respectfully. Maybe we all have children, I suspect, and we know that maybe is just a delayed yes as far as they're concerned. There is another approach which is called available to promise. You ask me to do something by end of next week. I look at my resource, my workload, and all the things I've got to work on. You know what? I can't do it by the end of next week. I could do it by the week after, or I could do half of what you asked by next week. That's the approach of available to promise. Is constantly thinking about what you're committing to, so you do not disappoint, but you provide the right value at the right time to the people who are asking you to do things. So on that point, I will invite David to join me. I will stop sharing. David, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Peter. I've got a question for you, Peter, but before I do that, I'd like just to cover a couple of examples of my own experience of some of the themes Peter's been talking about.
Okay.
So, as we're best outcome. We're outcome focused very much so. And Martin alluded to the program I ran a few years ago, which was the M&S transformation program, moving out of Baker Street. It was a major program, re-engineering processes, lots of change, IT, and so forth. And the important thing about that program success was actually delivering the outcome that was wanted. So I took over this program probably 6 months in, and the program team was working hard to move people from A to B basically, and work in the most efficient way possible. And my first task was to go and see the CEO, a guy called Roger Holmes at the time, and to ask him, well, what are you trying to achieve with this project? What's your goal? What's your outcome? So I went to see him. Very busy guy, obviously, had half an hour with him. And I asked him, well, what are you trying to achieve with this program? And he sort of looked at me. A few seconds went by, and I thought, well, and he said, well, it's very simple. I want a culture change. I want to completely change the culture of how we operate in the organization. And the building move is just a catalyst or a facilitation to make that culture change. So the program team downstairs was working for literally moving A to B and doing some IT stuff and, all that. But actually, the whole purpose of the program, the whole outcome that was wanted was really about changing the culture and making sure they work in a more efficient way. And this is this really pivoted the program into completely changing the end outcome, the end goal, and also the deliverables and the milestones preceding that. So it was a really important lesson that in some of the questionnaires we've been sent so far in terms of what people want to talk about is how can we guarantee project or program success. One of the most important things I think is to really focus on what are you trying to achieve with this project or program. And quite often you assume something, you infer something, what's deliverable, what's the outcome of this project, but actually different stakeholders, different key influencers have different views about what the outcome is. So focusing quite a lot of time on the outcome before you even start the project or program is a really important lesson I learned on that program. The second point Peter picked up on was reporting and standardization. And in an organization, you have stakeholders who maybe are involved in different projects. If they give us different progress reports, different status reports in different formats, it's just not very helpful. Having a standard format, it's really helpful for people who are not involved in projects on a day-to-day basis, but are stakeholders or sponsors. It really helps them understand the project and the program and the outcomes and where they're at in terms of the status of that project. So that's really important to do. The other lesson I had from the M&S when I went to the Director of Change in IT on that program of transformation to go through my reporting back, my 16-page colourful deck as Peter described it, I sat down in front of him and he just, before I started to go through the dashboards and the highlight reports, he just basically moved all the papers away and looked me in the eye and said, what's the temperature of this program? What's really happening? And it was a really interesting lesson because it sort of made me think, it's not about going through progress reports and going through stuff. It's about really talking and communicating and being explicit about what are the issues that we have with this program? Are we going to hit success? What can he help me with? And it was a very powerful lesson. And it really just shows that reports, yes, they can be useful, but it's really being honest and being structured and making sure people understand what's the real issues and hurdles we have to overcome to achieve program or project success. And there are always hurdles in projects and programs. As Peter says, they are temporary endeavors and there are always hurdles to overcome. And therefore we need to be honest with those and see what strategies and mechanisms we need to adopt to make those hurdles disappear or jump over those, and so don't actually impact on the end deliverable or budget or outcome of that program. So picking up a couple of those themes, I thought was quite interesting. I had some very good experience of those things that Peter talked about running that big program, and I'll come back to some more later. But Peter, the Lazy Project Manager, what inspired you to actually write that book?
Well, I was insulted by my manager at the time. He called me the laziest person he'd ever met, and I sulked for quite some time. But what he was saying was, he recognised that I'd found a way to work more effectively, and it worked in the world I was in. And at that time, I was considering writing a book about project management, and just the two things came together. But why did I write the book itself? Really, that project I talked about, the 3-year one, where I kind of learned so much, and I wanted to share some of those experiences. And so when the book was first written, at the end of every chapter, there's a story where I screwed things up and learned a really important lesson, and I wanted to share that. And it's it's a short book, it's a fun book, it's got dinosaurs in it, and it's very different. And as a result of that, it's been popular for the last 15 years.
Good. I mean, I think another example I've got in terms of the lazy project manager, I think, is project planning. By the way, there's lots of blogs and articles and white papers on our website, all for you to access. And so project planning, sometimes we go into an organization who the project manager or program manager wants a Gantt chart or a plan, literally programmed down to the nth level of detail. So maybe it's an 18-month project and they want tasks and activities planned for 18 months. And this is really, you might think you're being very clever and working hard to produce this plan going 18 months out. But really, a far better, smarter, and maybe a lazy project manager approach would be to you plan in detail for what you know, and you plan in summary for what you don't know, because things change. If I say to you, what are you doing, Peter, in a week's time or 3 weeks' time, you probably know the answer to that. If I say, what are you doing in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months' time, you probably haven't got much clue. So things change in projects. So working smarter would be to do what we call rolling wave planning, where you plan in detail for the next 1 or 2 phases, and then the following phases are planned in high level, because it's too uncertain. Things will change. External events happen. So there's no point in spending a lot of time and planning a 500-line Gantt chart, for example, with things out in 18 months or 6 months or even 9 months' time, because it's too detailed. And you also, if you do produce that very, very detailed Gantt chart, it then becomes an industry in itself. You feed in the beast by actually updating and trying to manage that plan on a daily, weekly basis. So you're focusing on planning, and really you want to focus on the planning of the next phase in detail, and the rest of it is high level. If you start to do planning in everything in detail for 18 months, 9 months, whatever it is, you waste a lot of effort, and you then lose sight of the wood from the trees. You need to focus on what are your outcomes, what are you trying to achieve, and if you delve down into that massively detailed project plan, that is not a good way of or a smart way of working. And another point Peter did pick up around communication. There is no point in we see quite often producing a detailed Gantt chart, Microsoft project or PM3 our tool, and presenting 100, 200, 300 line plan to the sponsor or key stakeholders. They don't understand that. It's not a good vehicle for communication for that level of individual who may not be au fait with Gantt chart planning techniques or understanding the detailed critical path analysis, whatever you're using. Far better to go through a high-level milestone plan on 1 page or 2 pages with simple red, amber, greens. This is a project. These are the work streams. This is where we are in terms of red line today's date, and this is what's on track and what's not on track. Very easy to understand, very clear. And if you want to delve down into detail, then you can delve down into detail on the Gantt chart. But producing that Gantt chart for that organizer, that level of person, is not a good use of time, of your time or their time. Having a detailed Gantt chart for the project team, however, is a very, very good vehicle. So it's different plans for different audiences and different purposes. If you do that, then you are a lot more successful, I think, really. So that's just a couple of themes I picked up.
Yeah, I was gonna reflect on that experience I had where I was asked to coach a project manager, and they were struggling with getting their executive support, and I attended a meeting, and the project manager attempted to do exactly that. They presented a Microsoft project plan to the executives, and it was just overwhelming. They had to find a simpler way. That's kind of the coaching I did. I think the other point I would make is, when I encourage people to look at the plan ahead, is to build in some not contingency, but don't go 100% capacity, because things happen, as you say. And I always say to project managers, if you've got 100% full time for the foreseeable future, how are you going to cope when something does raise its head and there is an issue, you've got to be able to have the opportunity to be proactive and talk to your project team and encourage them and support them. Equally, you've got to have that time to spin around and deal with an issue if it's urgent. So it's a matter of balancing people's time, I think, when you're putting that plan together as well.
There's also, I think, a point where we had a client some time ago, or an organisation that the head of projects there wanted a big important project. No one could miss any deadline on any task, any activity in the next 6, 9, 18 months or whatever it was. It's a huge plan. That's just not a realistic or sensible way to approach things, because projects are uncertain endeavors. Therefore, planning is never accurate for any project, whether it's HS2 or a small, it's put a new CRM system application in. So plans, are fine, but they change, and there will be some delays, and there'll be some early tasks being delivered. So it's also, when you are talking to either steering group or you're talking to sponsors, it's very important to upfront explain that this is a plan and plans will change. And despite the best endeavors of the outcome and the previous outcomes and deliverables to make up the end goal of that project, events happen, and therefore things will change, and therefore the plan will change. That's another important point of why, if you show somebody a sponsor, for example, a very detailed Gantt chart, the chances are the activities are changing quite frequently. They're low level and they can move. But if you've got proper milestone planning, where the milestones are big things that happen and they are big deliverables, they won't change that much. They may change a bit, but they won't change that much. They may move out a little bit, but you're changing 10, 20, 40, 50 milestones. And that's fine. But if you are changing tasks every time a sponsor sees that project plan, then they start to lose confidence in you and the plan itself. Whereas if you're showing them the milestone plan, which maybe a few things may change, but the milestones generally stay the same. But if you go through the tasks or the Gantt chart, those activities may change. The actual activities may change. So if the activities are changing because things change in the project, then again you lose that confidence of a sponsor and the stakeholders. Milestones won't change a great deal. The dates may, but they feel comfortable. They understand the key milestones, the key stages of those deliverables on that project. So that's another important lesson I learned a number of years ago.
Yeah, I talk about that early part of the project I refer to as the journey of expectation management, because whether it's an internal project or an external project, there's a coming together at that point in time, and then there has to be a degree of understanding that things cannot be locked down on day one, and that's not a healthy way to go either in most cases. So it is about all parties coming together and having that open mind and that strong communication in order to deliver something of true value at the end. So yeah, I talk about a journey of expectation management.
And the other thing I'd mention is, in terms of project success, is some organizations have a culture that a red rag or a red traffic light is unacceptable. Well, when I've run projects and programs, even in that sort of culture, then a red rag is often a good thing. Why is that a good thing? Because I'm explaining and highlighting an issue that needs to be addressed, and the sponsor or steering committee need to help me as a project manager or the program manager overcome that issue. If I hide that issue by saying, "Oh, it's okay, it's green, really, no real problem," everyone just skates over it and moves on. But the real underlying issue, the rag and the red, doesn't go away. But if you do highlight the red and say, look, we have an issue here, things have happened, the vendor's gone bust, or he hasn't got the resources to work with us on this project. They said they had, they now haven't got it. There's no point in brushing that under the carpet. What you need to do is raise that as a red flag and escalate it. And, it's important to say, well, that's the red, but the road to green, how to get that red back to green is X, Y, and Z. So you are showing a negative in terms of the project, but you are then showing a positive in terms of the road to green is this. But if people do push back and say, well, we can't have reds on this project, then that's, to me, is a fundamental misunderstanding of project management, and you are creating a dishonest culture of reporting. And then, of course, what will happen is you'll never catch up, you'll never overcome that hurdle unless you address it. If you keep brushing under the carpet, then the inevitable will happen is the end outcome will not be delivered, and it will certainly be late. And so a red rag can be a good thing to do, as long as you couch it in it's a negative, but also this is a positive way to get onto green. So it's back to reporting again, to be honest and be clear to stakeholders what the true state of that project is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I took over a PMO many years ago, and it was very clear that there was we didn't have a system in place to calibrate status of health of projects at that point. It was all manually put in, and obviously project managers were hiding things and were being a little bit dishonest and over optimistic perhaps. And one of the things I instigated in that company was we had a program which was all about honesty in the end. So because once you know, then you start to deal with the problems. And so we created a red is a new green sort of amnesty program. Come to me, come to the PMO team, tell us the truth about what's going on, and we'll do everything we possibly can to resolve it. If you don't tell us, then we're going to hit a brick wall at some point, and it's not going to go well. And that was pretty successful. And not everybody felt that they could trust the PMO at that time, but many people did, and we managed to managed to explore the underlying problems that were going on.
Great. I think there's some questions, Martin, that have been sent in. Is that correct?
Yes, we have some questions that were submitted prior to the session as well, but we've had one submitted during the webinar today, which is, how do you manage your inbox? This is from Kevin. How much time should one spend on emails? I could easily spend entire days if I wasn't careful. And how much working time and thinking time do you allow yourself within a work week?
All right, I'll give that a go.
Do you want to start? I can go on.
Yeah, I'll give it a go first, and over to you, David. I mean, my inbox is, I'm probably going to regret saying this now, but right now my inbox is very low on it. I mean, I am super efficient when it comes to email. I summarize, I store, I create reminders in my Outlook diary to act on certain things that come in. I delegate to my team. I trust them. I stay on top of it. I couldn't tell you how much time I spend on it, but I would just say I found a way of being very efficient. And I've done that by making sure I don't get involved in things I don't need to get involved in. I trust my team to do the things that they need to do. I minimize the amount of communication that's required between the team, down to the essence of what we need to do. We get together on a weekly basis to share information anyway, which removes a whole lot of email. And we also use Microsoft Teams for chat, etc. So that's the approach I take, and it's just my style of working is I'll probably look at my email first thing in the morning, and it's done and dusted by the time I've had my first coffee. David?
Yeah, in terms of email, if I take it in the context of a project management, for example, again, when I finished the head office transformation at M&S, I was doing the stores refresh program for them, and then I sort of after about a year I left that because I was working on best outcome then. And there's a project program manager from one of the big consultancies who basically took over from me, and he sat next to me for a while, and it was interesting because he never moved from that desk, and he basically spent his time writing emails and having email conversations and batch this is before Teams, of course, so sort of a batch processing. And really, that to me is not the way to run a project, right? By email, you need to get out there. You need to either physically seeing people, or via Teams or Zoom, whatever it may be. But project management to me is about communication. It's about an email may be part of that, but I think people can get too bogged down in just sending emails out and not actually meeting people and having a more interactive discussion, because email is a simple batch process. One thing goes, one thing comes back. But when you're having discussions with also multiple people in the room, for example, with the Teams or physically, you get a better understanding of the project, and you get better communication from the team, and it's just a better way of operating, really. So my inbox is quite busy, but I'm quite brutal in terms of triaging things out that are spam, selling things or whatever it is. And if I'm running a program or a project, I'm very much focusing on that, but I don't use it to communicate a lot to the either the team or the steering group. I prefer to use either a Teams meeting like this or a webinar or a face-to-face ideal meeting, to especially weekly progress reports or sponsored steering group meetings and so forth. That's a better way of communicating rather than getting bogged down in emails. But it was very interesting seeing this guy sitting next to me, literally didn't move from his desk for 7 hours. That's not, in my view, the way to run a project or program. It's about interacting. It's about challenging people. It's about encouraging people, motivating people, and you don't do that from email.
Cool.
Thank you very much for that. We have another one from Sarah. Do you think providing training to senior stakeholders in their role within a project and ensuring they have a basic understanding of project delivery approaches should be done if they have not been involved in one before?
Well, I can take that one initially, Peter.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a great idea. I think if we are on this call mainly project managers or PMO people, we're used to running projects. Maybe we've been trained in PMP, Prince, whatever it may be, or Agile, and we understand what projects are all about. And as Peter says, they are different from work as usual. They're temporary endeavors, a start and an end date, and a defined deliverable. But when you're going to, maybe you've got a steering group for your project, or you've got some stakeholders, then the chances are that quite a few of those people have had no experience of running a project, and they don't really understand the project management process. And there is a sort of a feeling out there, which I don't agree with, is that anyone can run a project. If you look at the apprentice program, this week, Alan Sugar says, well, you're running this project. Well, that assumes that everyone can run a project. Not everyone can be a salesperson. Not everyone can be a marketing person. Not everyone can be a project manager. Different skill sets are different, and experience for different people. So, it's really important. And so if you've got a stakeholder on the steering group, for example, I think it's really useful to, and I used to do this, is I go and see them and explain, in high level terms, what the project management process is all about, how it's different from business as usual, and also explaining, more importantly, what their role is on this project. Especially if you're a sponsor, you're responsible for delivering the benefits, you're achieving those benefits. So, and you're responsible for helping the project team overcome hurdles and so forth. Because sometimes these senior stakeholders are put onto a steering group and have no real understanding of their role in that steering group. So the first steering group session I normally run is your role on this committee, what this committee is all about. It's not a meeting group. It's a group to help the project team deliver this project more successfully. That's what it's all about. I wouldn't train the stakeholders in a group because they can be senior people, and quite often they don't like to expose their lack of knowledge of a particular subject like project management. So I would do a one-to-one sort of training session, and it's a real high level, just explain the concepts, explaining things like there will be some red traffic lights, there will be some scope increases probably on this project, there will be some delays. That's how projects work. Again, I remember we had a chap at big retailer who talked about, and they were seconded to the project, and as a key stakeholder, and his first task was, right, what are we doing today? What's the list of things we're going to do today? And it's very much a tick list of things. But when he was working in stores, that was operationally doing things today, now, immediately. Whereas project is about planning for the future, planning for uncertainties, and you're planning longer term really as well. So it wasn't about all the detailed tasks today. It's about planning back from the end outcome and deliverable. So I think, in summary, having a little bit of awareness or communication or training to stakeholders who are involved in the project, their role and how the projects work, will be very valuable investment of time and make that project more successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's a great question. So I did some research a while back, and I can teach you everything you need to know about project sponsorship in 3 numbers, and those numbers are 85, 83, 100. And what that actually means was, the survey I did was across the world, range of businesses, different sizes, and I asked a question. Do you, one, obviously we qualified by saying, do you run projects? So that's the first thing. But then we said, do you have recognized the role of project sponsor, senior reporting officer, senior stakeholder, whatever it may be? And 85% of those companies said yes. I was never quite sure what the 15% were doing to oversee their projects, but 85%. So that's the first number. And then the second question is, okay, so what do you do to help train, guide, support, mentor your sponsors? And 83% of the companies came back and said, absolutely nothing. These are senior people. We expect them to know what to do. And as you said, David, many of these people did not have a project management background. And then the killer, we said, how important do you think it is to have a good project sponsor on a project? And it wasn't 100%, it was actually 99.5%, but let's call it 100. Everybody said, yeah, it's really important. And it was a crazy mix of this is a really important role, but we're doing nothing to help these people. And you're right, David. I mean, I run sessions where it's kind of group discussions about it's not about the individuals, it's not about the sponsor role, it's about raising the capability or the profile of success. And then what I found works is individual coaching with project sponsors in the privacy of their own office to talk about how areas they'd like to improve, really. So you have to be quite sensitive because these are senior people, but it's an ongoing problem, and one I think we should address.
Yeah,
Thank you both for that. We have 3 questions at the moment, so we'll try and get through those. The first one is from Alison. Do you have any advice on operating successful projects and programs in an environment where risk is heavily tolerated and has low maturity with processes.
Okay. So
Do you say risk is high, is tolerated, Martin?
Risk is heavily tolerated and has low maturity with processes.
That's an interesting question. I think sometimes risk is tolerated. It can be a good thing, also can be a bad thing. You know, too much. So when you're looking at when we look at projects, for example, for our portfolio going forward, looking at PM3, for example, we would look at rather than sort of decibel management about I want my project in the portfolio because I'm an important person. We look at can we rank that project against the fit to a business objective and also fit to risk. You know, you might have a project which will maybe really align with the business or organization's objectives, but actually when you identify or analyze the risk of it, the risk of delivery may be, you know, the risk of non-delivery, sorry, may be quite high, and the risk of non-delivery of the benefits may be quite high. So sometimes you may need to look at that and think, well, should we actually do that project if you've got even if you've got a higher risk tolerance, should you be doing that project which has got a higher risk of non-delivery of benefits or the actual project, even though it meets a sort of high level of organizational objective fit effectively. And if it's a low maturity of process, I think if you have that plus the tolerance, high level of risk tolerance, then I think you can be in a sort of quite a dangerous situation because I do think there needs to be a level of maturity of project management processes. And I'm not talking about books and books of standards and methods and stuff, but there has to be some general maturity, a sufficient amount, and that depends differently on different organizations, about some project management processes, about what, how you run things. Because if you don't have that maturity, you don't have any standardization, and you align that to high level risk appetite, you could be in for a lot of project failures. And then, you know what, in 2 or 3 years' time, suddenly the risk appetite maybe goes away, and somebody says, well, you know, we're failing a lot of projects here. Why are we doing that? Well, we're failing because we've got low maturity of project processes, and also we've got high appetite to risk. Those two combinations, I think, thinking about it, can be quite dangerous. So I'd even though you've got high appetite to risk, I would still, as a project, want to make sure I manage those risks and mitigate those, and be really clear about what we're doing, and making sure the stakeholders and sponsors understand those risks and the impact if those risks become issues for the company.
Maybe the starting point in this organization is the one bit of process you put in is the initial risk evaluation, because you know they might think they have a higher tolerance of risk, but if you actually expose what the risk really is, I don't know. I don't have any personal experience of an organisation that operates in that way. Certainly, I've worked in many organisations that have immature processes, but they've always considered risk as something they're a little averse to.
I worked in one organisation, a big oil company, and they had quite a high tolerance of risk in a way because you know, their project budgets were round up to the nearest $1 million. You know, it was we work for a retailer, and that's just totally unacceptable. That's down to the nearest 10,000 or 5,000, and they had a high appetite to risk in if it overran by $1 million, it wasn't a big deal. But then things changed in the organisation, and then the risk appetite changed dramatically due to, you probably know what I'm talking about, due to an event in America. So their appetite to risk changed dramatically, and then it became a lot tighter in terms of their appetite for risk, really. So I think those things can change quite rapidly. So I think those two are quite dangerous combinations, personally.
Yeah. So Martin, maybe we can try and get the last question in.
Yes, this is a good one. It relates to a point we covered earlier. When coming to work, this is from Reese. When coming to work and creating a to-do list for the day or project, often enough, none of these items are crossed off due to responsibilities beyond your control. The constant wait for others to contribute to tasks can be frustrating. How do you manage the expectations that you have of others? And are there suitable methods of escalations that you have used that help with crossing off items from the list?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I talked about of, like, you know, control the things that come in onto your list in the first place. You know, can you evaluate what's being asked of you? Can you question it? Can you push back? Can you provide some kind of initial outline of when you're likely to get to it? I mean, I think that in itself will probably help. And then I think it's also looking at that list. Are things you can drop off now? I mean, things that are no longer critical. But you're never going to clear your to-do list out completely. Like you're never going to clear your inbox out either completely. There's always going to be some things. But I'm going to go back to, what is that combination of importance and impact, and focus on that, because that's the thing that's going to get the most return on your personal investment. David?
I think I'd echo that, and I think you might be horrified if you look at my inbox and my to-do list, and I'm quite brutal. I'm quite brutal with it, really, and I think when you're running projects and programs, you get to focus on, take a maybe not a lazy project manager view, but maybe an entrepreneurial project manager view, which says, right, what value does this task and activity actually do? Am I going to, and it's about triaging that list of actions that's on your to-do list, which adds the most value. So there'll be things on that project that really you can delegate to somebody else, possibly, who can be maybe not more effective, but you can spend your time more effectively on the more high value added things that contribute to the successful outcome of that project. So you've got to be really, I'm a great believer, you've got the end outcome, end goal of the project, you've got some intermediary outcomes. I'm a great fan of gateways and stage gates, and part of that is throughout the project you focus on, are we still on track to deliver the outcomes of this project? Are we still delivering the quality that is required by this organization? And that's the focus that the project manager must be absolutely laser sighted on. And other things that come in that really are more down in the weeds and not value added activities, you just have to scrub them off and just try and either delegate them to somebody else or just not do them, and focus on the big things that are going to contribute to the end outcome of your project. So writing hundreds of progress reports and changing this progress report, adding this column there, doing that, is that added value work, or is it more added value focusing on what I need to do, my team needs to do to achieve the successful outcome of that project? And that's what you've got to do. I think you've got to be really triage your action list and just focus on the important things. And the other stuff, sometimes you don't do things which are sort of more menial, more trivial. It's amazing how no one actually says anything. No one actually
They go away, don't they? They go away quietly.
If you don't send a report to somebody, it's amazing how sometimes no one comes back and says, where's that report, where's that issue? So but if you don't send a report to the sponsor on a monthly basis, or whatever the time and frequency is in your organization, quite often there'll be a phone call saying, where is it? So it's about triaging things more effectively, I think.
Perfect.
Difficult to do, and it's not easy to do, but I think you've got to be brutal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think that's the end of the questions now. So if we haven't got round to answering your questions, then please do let us know. We will continue the conversation after the webinar. Now, to sort of like finish things off, we first of all thank you very much for joining us. We hope you found Peter's insights valuable and David's input also, and that you're leaving with practical strategies to simplify success and achieve better project outcomes in 2025. Dinosaurs optional, but contingency is sensible, I think, is the main talking points of today. We'll send out a copy of the slides covered, as well as a link to the recording. And for 5 lucky live webinar attendees, there'll be a draw for Peter's book, The Lazy Project Manager. We'll reach out to those drawn to see how you would like your prize sent to you. As we said at the start, best outcome, we're committed to helping organizations work smarter, not harder. If you'd like to learn more about how our PM3 ecosystem can support your project and portfolio management needs, you can reach out via our website, which also includes a knowledge base containing blogs and white papers for you to take a look at. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, drop us an email, or scan the QR code at the bottom of this screen if you're watching on a desktop. If you're watching on your phone, that might be a bit difficult, but we'd love to hear from you. Once again, a big thank you to Peter, David, to all of you for your time and engagement, and we very much look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you.